You watched 13 episodes. You know the problems. Now I'm going to tell you something that might frustrate you. Half of those problems cost under $50 to fix. Total. Not each, total. And you haven't done it yet. Let's change that today. I'm not selling you a preparedness lifestyle. I'm not building your identity around being a prepper. I'm doing what I always do, running the numbers. And the numbers say this. The most common reason people have 31 failure points and 0 fixes is not money. It's framing. The fixes looked optional because the problem never felt systematic. You watched the episodes in isolation, layer by layer. Water, energy, heat, food. But the map in episode 14 did something the individual episodes couldn't do. It showed you the whole system at once. All 7 layers. All 31 failure points. All 14 cascading dependencies. And now you can see something specific. There is a cluster of failure points that fall below $50 per fix. Several of them fall below $20. And they address vulnerabilities that, unaddressed, cascade into every other layer of the system. This episode is that list. 12 items, real prices, what each one closes on the map from episode 14, and a priority tier for each so you know which ones to do first, which ones to do this month, and which ones to finish before the end of the season. Before we start, one framing point that matters for how you use this list. I am not working in purchase price. I am working in cost of ownership. These are different numbers and they produce different decisions. Purchase price is what you pay once at the register. Cost of ownership includes what you pay over the life of the item, and, critically, it includes the risk-adjusted cost of the alternative. What happens if you don't have the item and the failure mode occurs? An engineer who is buying backup hardware for a production server doesn't just look at the hardware cost. They look at the cost of downtime if the primary system fails without a backup. That calculation makes a $300 UPS obvious when the server runs a system that costs $10,000 per hour of downtime. Same logic applies here. I'll give you the purchase price for each item. I'll also give you the cost of absence calculation, what the failure mode costs if you don't have the fix in place. The ratio is what tells you whether the fix is worth it. And for every item on this list, the ratio is strongly in favor of the fix. There is also a second framing point worth stating once before we go into the list. Priority order is not the same as importance order. Every item on this list is important. Priority order is about sequencing, which ones to do first, given that you have finite time and attention. The tier structure in this list is based on 2 variables: severity of the failure point on the E14 map and the cost per failure point ratio. Tier 1 items are not more important than Tier 3 items in an absolute sense. They are more time-sensitive and they deliver more value per dollar. That is the engineering definition of priority. Do Tier 1 first, then Tier 2, then Tier 3. But don't wait until Tier 1 is complete before starting to think about Tier 2. Run the parallel track where you can. One more note. No affiliate links, no codes, no commissions. I name items because they exist and because they work, not because someone paid me to name them. Prices are approximate, based on real market prices at time of recording. Your region and supplier will create variance. The order of magnitude is what matters. These are $10 fixes and $40 fixes. They are not $200 fixes. Now, the list. 12 items in 3 tiers. Tier 1. 3 items. Highest failure point per dollar ratio in the map. If you do nothing else from this episode, do these 3. They address your 3 highest severity failure points across 3 different layers. And their combined purchase cost is under $75 with 0 ongoing maintenance cost. Item 1. Water storage containers. $20 to $40 for the setup. This closes water layer failure point 1, no stored water supply, rated the single highest impact, highest likelihood, lowest fixed cost failure point in the entire map from episode 14. We covered the water layer in episode 2. The failure point is binary and brutal. You either have stored water or you don't. Municipal water pressure fails, the pipe bursts in a freeze event, a boil advisory goes out, and within hours your household is in an active water emergency. The cascade from this failure is documented. Food preparation collapses, sanitation fails, medication administration for anything requiring water becomes a problem, and if you have infants or elderly family members, the timeline to acute harm is short. This is the highest severity node in the entire 7-layer map. The fix is containers. Full containers. That is the entire intervention. A 55-gallon drum at $20 to $25 and an afternoon of work gives you a roughly 30-day minimum consumption supply for one person, or a week-plus supply for a family of 4 at normal usage. 5-gallon food-grade containers at $8 to $12 for a set of 5 are more flexible, easier to move, easier to rotate, and you can fill them to your current storage capacity and expand over time. Either approach closes the failure point. Both approaches are under $40. The math here is almost uncomfortable to say out loud. A $22 drum eliminates a failure point that cascade connects to food, sanitation, and health, 3 separate layers of the vulnerability map, for $22 and an afternoon. There is no other intervention in the map with this ratio, not even close. If you have not done this yet, it is item 1. Not after you finish this list. Item 1. Tonight if possible. Item 2. NOAA weather radio, $25 to $35. This closes communication layer failure point 1. No information access when infrastructure fails. I mentioned this fix at the end of episode 14, and I want to give it the full explanation it deserves here. If your cellular network goes down, your internet goes down, your power goes down, what is your information source? For most households, the honest answer is nothing. You are blind at the exact moment when information is most operationally critical. You don't know whether the outage is 2 hours or 2 weeks. You don't know whether there's an evacuation advisory, a water contamination alert, a structural hazard in your area. You have no data layer. A $28 NOAA weather radio changes this completely. NOAA broadcasts emergency information directly, not through the cellular network, not through the internet, not through grid-powered infrastructure. The broadcast exists specifically because every other information layer has failure modes. It runs on a built-in hand-crank generator or on standard AA batteries. A full set of 3 AA batteries costs $2 and runs the radio for 40 or more hours of continuous use. And the scope of the broadcasts is wider than the name implies. Yes, it covers weather. It also covers emergency management alerts, infrastructure failure notifications, evacuation orders, public health events, and regional emergency declarations. It is the one information layer specifically engineered to function when everything else has failed. And it costs $30. I genuinely don't have a polite technical explanation for why most households don't own one. It's not price, it's $30. It's not complexity, it's a radio with a dial. It's framing. In a stable environment, the need is invisible. The radio sits in a store and looks unnecessary. This episode is about closing failure points while the environment is stable and the fixes are available. This is one of those fixes. Put it on the list. Item 3. Physical cash reserve. Zero acquisition cost. This closes finance layer failure point 1, single point of failure in the payment system. The physical cash reserve is the only item on this list with no purchase cost. You already have the money. The intervention is moving a portion of it into a physical form that doesn't require the banking system to function. We covered this in episode 13 in full detail. The short version: your digital payment infrastructure has documented failure modes, bank system outages, card processing network failures, ATM network failures, regional banking disruptions. These events are not rare, they happen. In any of those scenarios, physical cash is your fallback payment layer. The implementation is 30 days of basic household expenses in mixed denominations: 20s, 10s, 5s, and 1s. Not all large bills. Change may not be available in a disruption, and a $50 bill in a scenario where a seller can't make change is the same as no money. Store the reserve at home in a secure but accessible location. The exact amount depends on your household. For most families, $200 to $400 covers 30 days of basic, non-optional expenses: food, fuel, and critical supplies. Cost of this intervention: 0. The money exists. You are changing its form, not spending it, and you maintain full access to it in the normal course of life. If you need to access it, you access it and replenish it. It is a reserve layer, not a locked account. That is your Tier 1, 3 items, under $75 in purchase cost and an afternoon of work. These 3 fixes address water layer critical failure, communication layer critical failure, and finance layer critical failure simultaneously, with the best failure point per dollar ratio in the entire map. If you stop here, you have addressed more of your acute vulnerability than the overwhelming majority of households in your area. That is not an exaggeration. It is what the data on household preparedness looks like. But we have 9 more items. Let's continue. Tier 2, 6 items. These address real failure points with high enough priority that I want them done within the next 30 days. They can follow Tier 1 sequentially, get Tier 1 done first, then work through Tier 2 in any order based on your household's specific situation. Item 4. Emergency lighting, $8 to $15. This closes energy layer failure point 3. No non-electric lighting during extended outage. This sounds like a minor comfort issue. It is not a minor comfort issue. Consider the actual operational scenario. You are navigating your home in complete darkness. You need to read medication labels, check an injury, locate a child, assess damage to a structure, or manage a situation at 2 in the morning. The absence of non-electric lighting is an operational liability that turns manageable situations into potentially dangerous ones. A $6 set of emergency candles or a $12 battery LED lantern eliminates this failure point. Candles carry a fire risk, particularly relevant if children are present or if you're managing a stressful disruption scenario. Battery LED lanterns have no fire risk, can be left unattended, and at modern LED efficiency, run for 20 or more hours on standard AA batteries. My recommendation is both: a pack of emergency candles as secondary backup, 1 battery LED lantern as the primary. Total cost is under $18. This is not a significant investment. It is the minimum non-electric lighting layer that a household should have. Item 5. First aid kit, a real one, $30 to $50. This closes health layer failure point 1, no medical intervention capability during disruption. Most households fall into one of 2 categories: no first aid kit at all, or a promotional kit with 5 band-aids and a packet of antiseptic that expired in 2019. Neither of these addresses the actual failure point on the map. A genuine first aid kit capable of addressing lacerations, burns, sprains, and basic medical needs at the level that would normally require a clinic visit costs $30 to $50, not the $90 tactical kit. A standard comprehensive kit in the Red Cross style at $35 covers the primary gap. The cost of absence calculation here is direct. A moderate injury in a stable environment is a $200 urgent care visit. A moderate injury during an infrastructure disruption, when roads are compromised or clinics are closed, is a self-managed event. The difference between a manageable situation and an escalating one that requires resources you don't have and creates secondary problems is often whether you have the right supplies available in the first 5 minutes. A $35 kit. That is the spread between manageable and escalating. Item 6. Portable propane camp stove with 2 to 3 extra fuel canisters. $30 to $45 total. This closes cooking layer failure point 1. No alternative cooking method when the primary appliance fails. Your kitchen stove runs on electricity or natural gas. Both have failure modes you cannot control. Extended power outages eliminate the electric stove. Gas line disruptions, pressure failures, service interruptions eliminate the gas stove. A $12 single-burner camp stove and 3 to 4 propane canisters at $6 to $8 each gives you a cooking layer that is independent of both grid electricity and municipal gas supply. One propane canister of the standard 16.4-ounce size runs approximately 1 to 2 hours of continuous high-heat cooking, or significantly longer at simmer. 3 canisters beyond the initial setup gives you 6 to 8 hours of cooking capacity, multiple days of meals at realistic usage. This is not designed for comfort camping. It is designed to maintain the ability to boil water, cook food, sterilize equipment, and heat liquids when the primary cooking system is unavailable. Total investment, $38 to $45. Item 7. Compact Lithium Jump Starter Pack. $40 to $50. This closes 2 failure points simultaneously. Energy layer, portable power for communication devices during extended outages, and transportation layer, vehicle starting when battery fails without another vehicle available. A compact lithium jump starter has a primary function, starting a dead vehicle battery without requiring another car. This matters in a disruption scenario when roads are compromised, help is unavailable, or you need to leave quickly. But modern lithium jump starters also include USB-A and USB-C charging ports as standard features. A fully charged unit will charge a modern smartphone 4 to 6 times. Your smartphone is your primary communication device, your navigation device, your information access point, and your emergency contact tool. Keeping it charged during a multi-day power outage is an operational priority. This is not a whole home backup power solution. That is a different item at a different price point that we will cover in episode 16. This is a $45 device that prevents your communication and transportation layers from failing simultaneously during the most common disruption scenario, an extended power outage during which your car battery also dies from non-use or temperature. One device, 2 failure points, $45. Item 8. Water purification, tablets and portable filter straw. $15 to $25 for both. This closes water layer failure point 2. Water quality failure when a water source is available but potentially contaminated. Item 1. Addressed water quantity, the stored supply. This item addresses water quality, the treatment capacity when your stored supply is exhausted or when you need to draw from an alternative source. These are different failure modes, and they require different solutions. Water purification tablets, iodine-based or sodium hypochlorite, cost approximately $8 for a 50-tablet supply, treating roughly 12.5 gallons total. A portable filter straw, rated at 1,000 liters before replacement, runs $15 to $20 and filters individual consumption without batch processing. Both have trade-offs worth understanding. Tablets require a 30-minute wait period and affect water taste noticeably. Filter straws require flow-through usage and cannot treat water in bulk for cooking. The optimal configuration includes both. tablets for large batch treatment like cooking water, filter straw for personal portable use when you're away from your stored supply. Combined cost, $23 to $28. Combined coverage, all primary water quality failure scenarios on the map. Item 9. Mylar emergency blankets, 4-pack, $6 to $8. This closes heat layer failure point 2, no emergency thermal protection during acute cold event. Mylar emergency blankets retain up to 90% of body heat through radiant thermal reflection. They weigh approximately 100 grams per blanket. They fold to the size of a wallet, and they cost approximately $2 each. The performance per dollar ratio is the best of any item on this list for the heat layer. This is not a substitute for an alternative heat source. We cover that in episode 16 as a mid-tier budget item. This is an acute emergency bridge. If your primary heat fails in the night, if you need to move outside in cold conditions, if someone in your household is showing early signs of hypothermia, a Mylar blanket is the first intervention available before any other heat system can be deployed. A 4-pack at $7 is basic emergency equipment that belongs in every household in any climate that drops below 50 degrees Fahrenheit seasonally. That is not a dramatic claim, it is what the item costs and what it does. Tier 2 total, between $137 and $196, depending on what you already own and your specific product choices. Combined with Tier 1, you are at $160 to $270, and you have addressed 9 failure points across 6 layers of the E14 map. Tier 3. 3 final items. These are real failure points, real fixes, real value. But their severity scores and time sensitivity put them at lower priority than Tiers 1 and 2. Complete these within the season. Item 10. Offline Reference Library, $0 to $15. This closes Information Layer Failure Point 1, no access to practical reference knowledge when internet is unavailable. Your knowledge has an internet dependency you may not have fully audited. Medical reference, first aid procedures, water treatment protocols, equipment repair guides, navigation information, emergency protocols. If your internet access goes down for an extended period, how much of your practical knowledge is actually accessible? The answer for most people, if they are honest, is less than they think. The fix has 2 parts. First, download critical references to an offline device tonight. FEMA emergency guides, basic first aid protocols, water treatment procedures, equipment manuals for anything in your preparedness setup, all available free, all downloadable as PDFs that function with no internet connection. A fully charged tablet with these files downloaded is an information resource that requires no connectivity. Cost, $0. Second, physical printed reference. A printed survival or emergency reference guide costs $10 to $15, used, and has no battery dependency, no device requirement, and no failure mode beyond physical damage. The SAS Survival Handbook in paperback is $14. An older edition medical reference is under $10. Both together is under $25 and covers most realistic information needs during an extended connectivity disruption. Item 11. Basic hand tool set. If you don't already have one, $30 to $50. This closes maintenance and security layer failure point. Inability to perform basic structural repairs without external service access. A hammer, flathead, and Phillips screwdrivers in multiple sizes. An adjustable wrench, slip joint pliers, and a utility knife. Most households have some of these scattered across different locations. Few households have a complete functional set, organized and accessible in one place. The specific failure point this addresses: when infrastructure is disrupted and you need to board a broken window, reinforce a damaged door, shut off a water supply valve at the fixture level, perform a basic structural repair, or address an equipment problem that would normally require a service call, manual tools are the fallback layer. A basic set from a hardware store in the $30 to $40 range covers the primary gap. If you already have a complete set, skip this item. The money is better spent elsewhere. Item 12. N95 respirator masks, 10-pack, $12 to $20. This closes health layer failure point 2. No respiratory protection during air quality events. Power plant incidents, wildfire smoke intrusion, building fires in your area, infrastructure failures producing particulate matter, dust events during structural disruption. All of these create air quality failure scenarios where basic respiratory protection significantly changes health outcomes over extended exposure. N95 respirators filter 95% of airborne particles above 0.3 microns. They are not a gas mask, and they do not address chemical vapors. But for particulate events, which are substantially more common than chemical events in residential scenarios, N95 is the appropriate and effective tool. A 10-pack at $15 provides 10 full protection events for one person, or proportionally fewer for multiple household members. At typical disruption exposure durations, this covers the primary need. The marginal cost is low enough that doubling the supply to 20 masks at $30 is worth considering if you have a multi-person household. $15 for a 10-pack. Now the full summary. Tier 1. Do immediately, this week. Water storage containers, $20 to $40. NOAA weather radio, $25 to $35. Physical cash reserve, $0. Tier 1 purchase total, $45 to $75. Tier 2, due within 30 days. Emergency lighting, $8 to $15. Real first aid kit, $30 to $50. Camp stove with extra fuel, $30 to $45. Lithium jump starter, $40 to $50. Water purification tablets and filter, $23 to $28. Mylar blankets, $6 to $8. Tier 2 purchase total, $137 to $196. Tier 3, due within the season. Offline reference library, 0 to 15. Basic hand tools if needed, 30 to 50. N95 masks, 12 to 20. Tier 3 purchase total, $42 to $85. All 12 items combined, $224 to $356. 12 items. 9 failure points addressed with direct fixes. 3 additional failure points substantially reduced. 6 layers of the vulnerability map improved. Now I want to come back to the cost of ownership framing because it changes how you read those numbers. The cost of not having these items is not zero. This is the most common framing error in preparedness thinking, and it's worth taking apart precisely. No stored water. During a local water disruption, bottled water at emergency pricing runs between $300 and $800 for a week of supply for a family of 4. The $25 drum fix costs 1/30th of the emergency alternative, and that's in a scenario where bottled water is available for purchase. In a scenario where it isn't, the cost of absence is acute harm on a short timeline. NOAA radio. The cost in a stable environment is 0. The cost during a disruption, when you are making decisions without accurate information about duration, geographic scope, official guidance, or hazard status, is decisions made on no data, with all the cascade consequences of decisions made on no data. No camp stove. The cost in a stable environment is 0. During a multi-day power outage, which affects average American households, statistically around once every 1 to 2 years, the cost of absence is inability to heat food or water for the duration, which is manageable with access to restaurants and convenience stores, and not manageable if those are also closed, or if you're managing a sick household member or infant. No first aid kit. The cost of absence is $200 for an urgent care visit to address an injury that $14 of supplies would have managed at home, in a scenario where urgent care is accessible. In a scenario where it's not, the cost is whatever results from an unaddressed injury without supplies. Run this calculation for every item on the list. In every case, the purchase price is a fraction of the risk-adjusted cost of absence. That is, the cost of ownership argument, not quote_0, That is the engineering framing. That is the number that matters. Now the conversation I need to have about the quote_2 response, because it is real and I am not going to pretend otherwise. You have financial priorities. You have time constraints. The items on this list are competing with everything else in your budget and schedule for attention. That is a real constraint, and I am not dismissing it. Here is what I will say. The probability of needing any specific item on this list in the next 30 days is low. In a stable environment, most disruption scenarios are local, short-duration events that resolve without the need for sustained preparedness resources. You might go 30 days, 6 months, 2 years without encountering the specific failure mode that makes the weather radio or the camp stove or the Mylar blankets operationally necessary. But probability doesn't care about your timeline. That is the fundamental issue. The water main break doesn't know you plan to buy containers next month. The power outage during a cold snap doesn't schedule itself around your budget cycle. The failure mode that was theoretical on Tuesday is operational on Thursday, and it arrives without advance notice by definition. There is a specific cognitive trap that the "I'll do it later" framing creates, and it's worth naming. When you say __quote_4__, you are implicitly calculating that the probability of needing the fix in the next X days is low enough to accept the risk. That calculation might even be correct. But the problem is that quote_5 doesn't have a date. Later is not next Tuesday. Later is the position on the list that stays occupied indefinitely by items that never become urgent enough in the moment to act on. I have seen this pattern across the 13 episodes of this series. People watch the water episode and think, I should get containers. 3 weeks later they think, I should really get containers. 3 months later, the containers are still on the mental list. The failure point is still open. The Tier 1 list, water containers, NOAA radio, cash reserve, is $45 to $75 and an afternoon. That is not a significant financial commitment relative to what it closes on the map. If the reason these haven't been done yet is not money, then the reason is attention. And the attention is here, right now, in this episode. The question is whether the attention converts to action this week or becomes another data point in the mental list that stays mental indefinitely. I am not going to frame this dramatically. I am going to say what the analysis shows. These are low-cost fixes for high-severity failure points. The cost of absence calculation strongly favors the fix, and the primary barrier is not financial. That is what the data shows. What you do with it is your decision. Next episode, episode 16, we move to the next budget tier, the $500 plan. What you can accomplish with a real but not extreme budget to address the failure points that the sub-$50 tier doesn't fully close. Backup power, the item with the single highest cascade reduction ratio in the map. The one fix that simultaneously reduces severity across 5 different layers. Alternative heat that is season-appropriate for your climate and housing situation. Water filtration at scale for the whole household. The communication and information infrastructure beyond the basic weather radio. These are items that require a meaningful investment, but that complete the picture that the $12 fixes started building. If Tier 1 and Tier 2 from today are the foundation, the minimum viable layer of resilience, Then episode 16 is the structure that goes on top of that foundation. And episode 17 will cover what sits on top of the structure. We are working up the stack in optimization order. Cheapest, highest impact items first, then the next tier, then the tier after that. One thing I want you to notice as you go through this process: the feeling of the map changes when items on it start getting closed. When you have the containers filled on a shelf, the water layer reads differently than it did when it was an open failure point. That's not psychological comfort. That's an accurate perception of a real change in your system status. The map is a diagnostic tool, not a permanent indictment. The failure points are closable, and the first 3 are closable this week for under $75. This week, pick 3 items from the list. Not plan to pick 3, pick 3, do them. Then drop a photo in the comments. I want to see real setups, not shopping lists, not intentions. Actual containers with water in them, an actual radio with batteries in it, an actual kit on an actual shelf. Show me what the map looks like when it starts getting fixed. The vulnerability map is real. The failure points are real. The cascade dependencies between them are real, and the fixes for 12 of the most significant failure points in the map are under $50 each, with a combined purchase cost under $360 for all 12. The only variable left is whether you address them this week or add them to the list that stays a list. The map is built, now we fix it. EOF.